We are going to put up 2 or 3 cases which we have seen. And as a general pediatrician, I am sure all specialists know that I need to start from which system is involved, whereas most of you know which system is involved. And I think that's where the fun of medicine starts. Anchal is a person who has just finished her post-graduation. She's DNB Pediatrics. She will present the cases, and both of us will interact with each one of you. I suggest you raise the finger, and I will get a mic to you. Please.
So we had an 8-year-old child who presented with mild to moderate grade fever, 99 to 101 degrees Fahrenheit, no other symptoms, and the child was well in the interfebrile period.
I think this is not unusual. Would somebody just say quickly, what would they have thought of? It's a 2 weeks low grade to moderate fever and nothing else, no other symptoms. Would somebody just talk something?
Sir, I think as a first step, we need to define or redefine that whether it's in a 2-week means every day child was running fever, or these were 2 different fever episodes with a normalcy in between, because that is the most common confusion parents would have. The fever lasting for the first initial few days, followed by normalcy in between, and then the second episode of fever. So we need to first reconfirm it's in a 14 days of daily fever versus the 2 distinct episodes of fever and normalcy in between.
Fine. I think that's where we start off, and we know that so far there is no symptom referral to any system, and we are looking what is going to happen. Physical examination was normal. Now at this time, what does one do? Do you do some tests? If so, what tests? Do you justify tests? What treatment do you give? Some thoughts on that. Because this is the exact way the children come to a general pediatrician, and any one of us may be right or wrong, it doesn't matter, but just the process of thinking, what would we be doing? This is nothing unusual.
Sir, would like to go with the fever without focus like presentation, and mainly basic investigations like hemogram and urine RM, that is the most commonly being done.
What are you possibly looking for? We'll do CBC, we'll do ESR, whatever. But what are we looking for? Or we will wait for something to come up?
If any infection is there, site of localization, we will be waiting for that only, the systematic presentation, whether it's getting established to the CNS, liver, or any system getting involved. With only fever, we can't go with only fever.
All that I know is that.
So apart from having the details of the fever history, at this juncture, because there are no other symptoms, I would still like to dwell a little more on the other part of the history, the growth history to be specific. And while we are waiting for the fever to localize, if it can, and of course offer no other treatment apart from antipyretic if there is a documented fever.
So all that we know, come to you.
See here, 2 weeks fever with no focus is something evolving fever with no focus on examination. That's it. There is infection or inflammation. We don't know the focus. And whether it's rising trend, persistently downward trend, or it is intermittent, that pattern of fever will tell us some clinical clue. Right now, it's just a fever, some infective inflammatory. It's with no focus, evolving disease, something.
Excellent. So far we have done that. It's an evolving problem. It's a low-grade fever, so maybe low-grade infection. Unlikely a strong immunological disorder, which generally presents with high fever, and therefore we are looking possibly for a low-grade infection like TB maybe. The next one. There you are. You got some focus on radiology. There was some infiltration. Obviously, this is not an acute bacterial infection, and therefore the physician tried to look at what else could be the etiology. Gastric aspirate was done thinking it could be tubercle. And even when it was negative, I'm sure that we all general pediatricians know that there is a type of tuberculosis which is clinically or radiologically diagnosed. Bacteriology may be difficult. Most of it is paucibacterial. So far, so good. So this justifies starting anti-TB treatment. The next one. But this is where we got into trouble. 4 days after anti-TB treatment was started, he suddenly develops high fever. He gets sick. He gets jaundice. His liver is enlarged. Span is 10 centimeters. Spleen is enlarged. There is nothing else happening. Now, least expected. Okay, we would have expected a very benign course, getting better over time. Suddenly this happened. Any thoughts? First the general pediatrician, then we will ask the super specialists.
It could be autoimmune hepatitis.
What kind of autoimmune? Autoimmune hepatitis?
Yeah.
We will ask them whether it is autoimmune hepatitis. But yes, what Dr. Kasliwal says is it must be an immune disorder of some kind.
2-3 points. One, I assume that the 2 weeks history is without any caveats. I assume that the clinical examination has been thoroughly done, not missed anything. On that background, right middle zone pneumonia, which was a silent pneumonia clinically. 8 years is a semi-adolescence. Unlikely to call it as possible. I will definitely try to get a bacterial diagnosis adequately, maybe in the BAL or whatever it is. If I take that everything is okay, giving empirically anti-TB treatment so early, I don't accept at this point of time. I'll try to define that. On that background, if you have started and got disease within 4 days, now something coming new after 2 weeks of a primary disease, to me is an immunological phenomenon. It can be autoimmune, as you said. It can be a drug reaction. It can be paradoxical response of AKT, whatever.
Fine. Though I would comment that you had a lung lesion there. Obviously, it was an infective lesion. You want to give an antibiotic trial? 2 weeks of low-grade fever. Which antibiotic and which bacteria? No. It is certainly a low-grade fever. And I very much justify a possible tuberculosis. Having tried to establish a diagnosis, you don't. But you don't wait doing nothing. Irrespective of that, keep it open whether it was there. I want to know. He suggested drug-induced liver disease. Could it be hepatic tuberculosis? Yeah. Madam, you will come a little later. I want my colleagues to first talk about it.
Sir, while it is not rational to give antibiotics blindly, even the RNTCP says that do give antibiotics as a trial.
I'm sure this child must have had it. By the time he comes, there is nobody in this country who doesn't get an antibiotic. Even without a symptom, you get an antibiotic. So I understand your problem, okay? But you don't expect antibiotic to work on this. Fine. Agreed. What I mean is that this child must have received an antibiotic and you don't expect any improvement. Anyway, now let's ask the, madam, please. Suggestion was autoimmune hepatitis, drug-induced hepatitis.
If I keep the whole clinical scenario in mind, first of all, a comment on tuberculosis. Anti-tubercular therapy explained maybe whatever infection you could see as a mid-zone infiltration, that was different. But now that 4 days later, the child has developed jaundice, unlikely that ATT would cause jaundice so fast. And the fact is that there is a spleen there. So if the spleen was not there earlier and has come in 4 days, I don't expect DILI to be the cause, because DILI is usually causing acute, and in 4 days' time, you will not have a spleen. So for me, spleen is very important. If this is not CLD, which it doesn't look like, then the spleen is very important, and this takes my mind towards, if it is CLD, then there are so many things that you're talking about. But if it is not CLD, then it takes my mind towards viral infections, the non-hepatotrophic viruses. Because you haven't really told me that there was any prodrome. And since there is an infection in the mid-zone, I would try to think of maybe adenovirus or one of those viruses, which can explain even the spleen, can explain the jaundice to happen in 4 days only.
Continuing what Dr. Seema is saying, taking this as the case, 2 weeks of fever followed by, forget about that anti-TB given or not given, but suppose it had been given, lung lesion followed by hepatosplenomegaly and a sick child. A child is becoming more sick now. So I would like to think of one, if you think TB as the etiology, continue it as even thinking of tuberculous hepatitis, which we do see, though it is less common, so we need the LFT to show a high SAP. We also have DRESS syndrome presenting like this when the child becomes very sick due to the drug. where the onset, it's quite fast, and the child becomes sick, high fever, liver, spleen, but usually they have a skin rash along with that. And third, something completely different, not tuberculosis, one should always keep it in mind because of the sick child. But I think if you think TB is correct and what we gave is correct, then we have to continue in that and not take into a separate etiology again.
Yeah, in fact, I agree with that. Hepatic tuberculosis does not come with jaundice. Okay. It's a disseminated reticuloendothelial hepatic enlargement. Madam, about...
Hepatitis I was talking about. We have seen patients coming with prolonged fever. They have very high SAP. OTPT will not be very high, and we have to suspect. See, the presentation of TB, we know, we've been with it for several years. It is so varied, so varied. So we cannot say it will not. It can, and if it had been in this child, I don't want to miss something, and then you continue ATT or not give ATT, I think we should be.
I see your point, but generally hepatic tuberculosis is a localized lesion, but I agree, even leukemia can have an hepatitis, but there's somebody who wants to say something.
The child had a normal physical examination 4 days back, and now suddenly starting to have a higher grade fever and hepatosplenomegaly. I would like to consider HLH also in this.
Excellent. I think give him a clap. He's talking about, madam, if it was a disseminated viral infection, it should have not taken 2 weeks to disseminate. Yes, HLH, yes. So it is a complication of a primary infection. It's a complication of a primary infection. Agreed. So, and suddenly something happening down the line unexpected is an immunological disease, and therefore the next. Go ahead.
So we ran a battery of investigations, and the CBC showed pancytopenia. However, the ESR was only 20, the CRP was 80, the bilirubin was mildly elevated to 6 with a direct of 4.2. The ALT and the AST were 260, 450, and the PTA, PTT were more or less normal.
Anybody commenting on ESR being near normal, but the CRP being very high?
Yeah, this is an indication of hypofibrinogenemia, and the CRP high is an inflammatory process, so likely now HLH is the story.
Absolutely. Any comments on a low serum albumin?
It shows very poor prognosis with HLH.
Low ESR and albumin 2.5, these are the, and pancytopenia, everything is macrophage activation and HLH. It happens in...
So,
I was just saying that low albumin in HLH. So like initially me and Dr. Malati was saying that anything, whether tuberculosis or in this viral infection, can cause HLH. Now the minute you see pancytopenia, you have to think of HLH. And that explains the spleen which came in 4 days only. So this is HLH, okay. But as far as albumin is concerned, low albumin associated with HLH spells out a poor prognosis.
Yeah, I was just thinking, albumin, half-life of 21 days, 19 to 21 days. So whether to begin with, there was a problem. So even though we give importance to albumin as a synthetic function, an albumin which is low, because the half-life of albumin is 19 to 21 days, we need to keep that in mind.
yes, I think generally you would say that if low albumin, it takes a little time for a liver disease to present, chronic liver disease. But albumin is also an acute negative phase reactant. There are 2 types of acute phase reactant, mostly positive, CRP, ceruloplasmin, transferrin, whatever. But there are also acute negative phase reactant, which means that the body sees that the albumin is not produced so that the other positive phase reactants are produced. This is an acute onset. So this may not mean that there is already a chronic liver disease in the background. I'm sure you all agree with that. This is still an acute liver disease. And therefore, I think the point on this case was just made that something happening suddenly down the line, unexpected, is either metabolic or immune. And this child now has a typical, go ahead. Yeah.
So the ferritin was 12,000, triglycerides 900, and the fibrinogen was 50. The bone marrow showed hemophagocytosis. and the diagnosis was HLH. Next. Treated with etoposide, steroids, cyclosporine,
Well, I
and
think
modified
we
ATP.
just wanted to make a point that something that evolved into a liver disease, all of a sudden acute generalized symptomatology, this is what an HLH. As Madam said, HLH is seen after any infection, after any malignancy, after any rheumatological disorder, but these complications are now today well known, and possibly they could be also well treated. Let's go to the next case. 1 minute.
I'm a pediatric surgeon, so I have a little less understanding of what you're talking about.
We don't have understanding.
I am understanding slowly. But the thing is, what I see from this is there was a basic problem, and that translated, so we don't know the cause actually. So there is viral, there is tuberculosis, there is etc. But he went into HLH. We have not treated the cause, and we don't know the cause. We don't know whether it is tuberculosis. So do you just treat the HLH, or you go further and think about investigations for the cause?
As I said, that the presumptive diagnosis, provisional diagnosis was still tuberculosis, and therefore we had to modify anti-TB treatment in the light of the liver damage, but all the same we would. I take your point that we have not proved a diagnosis of an etiology, but this is nothing unusual. We all treat infections with antibiotics without even demonstrating bacteriological thing. So I understand all this, but these are very likely presumptive, and now even the guidelines suggest that there is a condition like a clinically diagnosed tuberculosis, because possibacillary we can't get every time a gene expert or a bacteria. That's beside. Let's look at the second case. I think the whole idea was, as a generalist, we suddenly see something happening, and we need to keep in mind whether it is related indirectly, not the same infection going through. Let's look at the second one.
So we have a 10-year-old child, healthy, presented with nausea, anorexia, fever, and followed 2 days later with jaundice. Previous. Back.
Yeah, this was typical hepatitis A syndrome. You have a prodrome. Next.
Next.
Yeah, this is proved. Okay, next. Naturally treated symptomatically rightly. Next.
How about 2 days later, his fever increased, jaundice persisted, and he became breathless.
Now, what are your thoughts? This was the typical viral hepatitis, proved with IgM. Okay, expected to run a very mild course, self-limiting, and now suddenly he gets a high fever, jaundice continues, but he becomes breathless. Any thoughts on that?
Has he developed a pleural effusion or something?
Excellent. I think give him another clap. Okay. Why did you think about it?
It's a well-known complication of both A and E, particularly.
Excellent. Any comments from the super specialist? Okay. This is what we rarely see, but certainly.
I mean, pleural effusion singularly as a complication of HIV, I haven't seen, but yes, I have seen HIV associated with HLH, which again can give the same kind of. And pleural effusion, if it is present in a patient, it will take my mind towards HLH. Any serositis will take my mind towards HLH.
I think both Dr. Yacha and our papers, we have Yacha has given this form, acidic type of acute viral hepatitis. Out of 138-9 cases, he had seen ascites, then it goes into a pleural effusion also. Or it could be the balance, the child was in a balance of albumin state and they dip down and they get a protein. And we've also seen pleural effusion, though it is not very common. It is one of the manifestations you could see, a fluid collection. But when this occurs, we also wonder whether there's a co-infection of a leptospirosis or something like that, where you get a serositis in addition.
Nothing. I don't want to add anything.
You were mentioned.
I mentioned that is irrelevant to ascites, not to pleural effusion. Ascites can occur in patients of acute viral hepatitis, and it will go off within 4 to 8 weeks of time. They don't have nutritional compromises because of increased portal hypertension. So mostly it occurs in children who are less than 5 years of age, not more than 5 years of age. That's the information. That's acute, sporadic, viral hepatitis presenting as ascites. So it should not be taken as chronic liver disease, but then follow-up will tell us. It's not at that point of time.
Thank you.
Interestingly, we had a similar case who was referred to us by a pediatrician only because he had severe pleural effusion. He did have ascites. Ascites wasn't that great, but effusion was like one-sided right. And the pleural effusion in acute viral hepatitis is generally on the right side. Most of them, they would not need any tap. Maybe just little salt restriction and low-dose diuretic should be sufficient.
I think Prakash, you rightly suspected an effusion. The question was, is it a coincidental tuberculous pleural effusion or it's just an immune reaction? And how would you?
No, I had a child with a documented hepatitis A with a pleural effusion. In fact, I have a publication on that. And that's when I did a survey, and I did find that it's reported throughout the literature. And with E, the complications are more likely as compared to A.
Fine. So I think all that we did was just leave it alone and it started settling down. We will just show you a third case because we have some 5 more minutes. Okay, let's put that there. So, absolutely.
Fine.
That's what we did. In fact, we were asked to see whether this is tubercle, whether we should investigate. I said, no, let's wait and watch. And in a very short time.
Any mature clinician will wait and watch, will not jump. In this era of these lab investigations which are available, right and left investigations all the time, I think maturity lies with Dr. Ambedkar.
Let's look at, sorry.
So hepatic hydrothorax is a well-known entity. We can have that in the absence of ascites also. And as he was saying that it's most often on the right side. But the fact which is perplexing me here is increase in the fever. If acute viral hepatitis is causing ascites and hepatic hydrothorax, we don't anticipate an increase in the fever. So that will make me always suspect whether there is an infection which is related to this pleural effusion.
Let's look at that last.
Most of the HLH, like Dr. Yacha was saying, that you watch. So most of the HLH that we are seeing with us are actually they come to you in evolution, and with time they resolve also. You don't need to do anything about them. So this is what possibly we are seeing a lot of HLH around us. It is immune dysregulation, which happens for some time, and then they improve on their own. So you need in some of these HLH, you need to do nothing. So you need to watch. Yes, you need to watch, even if it's an HLH.
So generally, madam, HLH would justify aggressive action.
If I find that the fever is going down, if I find the distress, respiratory distress is also settling down, then possibly I would think that this was there and it's evolving now. It's kind of resolving now.
Let's get to that case.
We had a 6-year-old child who started with high fever, severe myalgia, and headache that continued for the next 6 days. Physical exam, the child was highly febrile, sick looking. He had apurulent conjunctivitis, but no other localization.
So some thoughts again.
As the child is having high-grade fever and along with there's an apurulent conjunctivitis, adenovirus is a cause for non-purulent conjunctivitis, as well as it can cause headache by causing meningitis. It can be an adenovirus infection.
So it could be one of the viral infections. Any other thoughts on that?
Kawasaki should not be missed in this case, though the age is more than 5 years, but then that can present any age and with the atypical presentation.
Any other thoughts on that? Fine. So I think we take a note. It could be a viral infection. It could be immunological, Kawasaki, etc. That's where we are. You have a high count. The rest of it is normal. So would anybody comment on that? You have a high count coming up. See, the other thing is by now, except an apparent conjunctivitis and severe myalgia, we don't have any other mucous membrane involvement. We have not seen anything else happening, skin rash, etc. So let's look at the next one. Next one. Next, please. No, wait. Ghai karu na ghai ode. Yeah.
So leptospirosis. Leptospirosis, sir.
Leptospirosis. Any thought on leptospirosis? Why did you say leptospirosis?
So initially patient had apurulent conjunctivitis and then started having jaundice. We don't know the creative over here, but then probable.
Give her a clap. She says that only purulent conjunctivitis, severe myalgia, etc. It could be leptospirosis. Yes, we also thought of leptospirosis, and you have a liver and spleen, etc. She said she wants a creatinine. We are discussing a liver problems, no? Any thoughts on that? She's asking for creatinine.
Associated non-oliguric renal failure.
Excellent.
So polyuria can look
Next
for.
one.
So the hemoglobin was 10.5, WBC 26,000 with a neutrophilic count of 72. Platelets were 2.4 lakhs.
Next.
Bilirubin was raised to 8
There you are.
and the creat was 1.8.
Okay. Just the point made. I mean, it's amazing that when we instigate people to think, at least one of us will think the right way. Okay. And what a power of thinking. Prakash comes out with pleural effusion and this girl comes with creatinine. It only shows that every time in a clinical bedside medicine, we have lost an ability to think. And if we think, then I think the matter becomes easy. And we just wanted to put up these 3 cases only to demonstrate that every time when 100 people think together, there is always something more to learn. And we learned today with each one of them coming out with a perfect answer.
I just have a question. Does INA, because I haven't seen leptospirosis, does INA really get deranged to that extent in leptospirosis?
Leptospirosis has such a severe myalgia that I've seen a 10-year-old being carried by the father. He even could not walk. And sometimes they present as if they have a neurological problem that they cannot even stand and walk. The pain is so severe, and an apurulent conjunctivitis is a reasonable marker. Of course, they are all right, adenoviral infection, Kawasaki, etc. I think the spectrum of diseases, I'm sure super specialists know much better, that it's a wide spectrum. And we saw a celiac disease at 15 years of age. I never knew that he was eating wheat happily and it took such a long time. So I suppose everything has a spectrum. Yeah, please.
It's okay to think of leptospira, but given the LFT, I would doubt. First thing is, when it is a not liver-loving thing, and day 3 of beyond day 4, day 5, liver-loving means hepatotropic. You expect SGPT to climb up. This is just biochemical interactions.
Sure.
Leptospira, I do say SGOT would be more deranged than SGPT. So I would just keep in mind, I am dealing with some other additional infection or some other underlying disease. Specifically look for left lobe of liver in this case. Look for, if possible, a KF ring if it is there, though it is too early to appear. I would definitely give a thought to send ceruloplasmin. If SGOT is still 250, I want SGOT to be more higher. As if it is a typical dengue, leptospira kind of issue. And coagulopathy, I would not rely on 2.4. I will give vitamin K and repeat INR because it generally they don't hit so bad, generally.
Fine. Next. Yeah. So the point is that if you take the entire clinical profile, it fits in that. I'm sure that every time 1 or 2 of the investigations or a clinical profile may not fit perfectly, but the whole story in general, you have a hepatic renal involvement, etc. So we decided to give a doxycycline. Well, I think all that we wanted to kind of instigate is, as a general pediatrician, we are often in a mix and we don't know where it's going to. And when a liver disease comes a little later in the course of disease, it's possibly a complication of something extra pulmonary, extra hepatic, and that has now affected. Most of the liver diseases would generally start early with this thing. Yes? I think we have finished much before time, and I thank you very much for all interaction. Right?